My toxic mother-in-law just threw divorce papers at my face because she says, oh, I can't have a baby, so I'm worthless. Yeah, I know it's absolutely ridiculous, but I'm not going to let it slide. I'm going to do something to that old woman. I always heard other people talking about it, but never really understood how painful it can be when all you want is a child of yours, but your life denies you that. It's as if you're pressing your nose against the sweet shop window of life, and you've never, ever are going to be able to be on the other side. Hey guys, I'm Freya, and I'm here because I just learned that something changed the entire situation my husband and I have been facing. But let me start with the introductions first, as it would help you understand the gravity of the situation better. I got married to my boyfriend of 6 years, Jason, 4 years ago. We were one of those couples who seemed perfect together, you know? We were high school sweethearts who everyone thought would last forever. When Jason and I first tied the knot 4 years ago, we were over the moon. See, we had plans, big plans that involved a white picket fence, a dog named Buddy, and a couple of rugrats running around the backyard. But life, as it often does, had other ideas. For the first year of our marriage, we were living in this blissful bubble of newlywed euphoria. We were young, in love, and utterly convinced that nothing could stand in the way of our dreams. Little did we know, life had made sure that those dreams never come true. I guess it was a little after our second marriage anniversary when we first decided that we were ready for the next part of our life. We figured that we were ready and financially stable, emotionally prepared, the whole 9 yards. But as months turned into years and the pregnancy test kept coming up negative, we started to get worried. At first, we brushed it off as bad luck. Maybe we were just timing things wrong or stressing ourselves out too much. So we did what any rational couple would do. We sought help. We went through all the usual tests, the poking, prodding, the uncomfortable questions about our sex life. Everything came back normal, or so we thought. The doctors could not find any reason why we weren't getting pregnant. So we moved to the fertility treatment, hoping science could help us when nature failed. Doctor appointments, fertility treatments, you name it, we left no stone unturned in our dreams to conceive. But time passed on, and our efforts have continued to yield nothing but disappointment. 2 years went by and still no baby. It was heartbreaking. Every month I hoped and prayed, only to be met with disappointment. My husband was supportive through it all. He kept reassuring me that it would happen when the time was right and that we had just need to keep trying. But it was hard not to feel like a failure, like my body was betraying me, and I knew somewhere my husband thought so too. As if this pain alone wasn't enough, my mother-in-law has, to be even a bigger pain. See, my relationship with my mother-in-law was a constant source of stress. From day one, she made it crystal clear that I wasn't good enough for her precious son. She was always criticizing me, finding fault in everything I did. However, soon it was forgotten, and her biggest issue became my inability to have children. She blamed me entirely, never once considering that her son might be part of the issue. Every family gathering was torture. My mother-in-law had a talent for making me feel small and inadequate, especially when it came to our struggles with infertility. Her comments were always hurtful, and I sometimes wonder whether she knew it was, considering how she was so relentless. My mother-in-law's close to 60. However, nobody would believe that once they hear which ferocity she used to humiliate me with. Her indirect taunts always delivered loud enough for everyone to hear. I remember this one Christmas time. All our family members were gathered around the family table. Almost everybody was having a great time. Only God knows why my mother-in-law thought it would be a great time to remind everybody that I'm childless. She sighed, saying how much of a shame it was that there was no little ones to share the traditions with. Like, seriously? Why not try your son? He doesn't seem much to adapt to the traditions either. And I felt eyes of the entire family on me as I tried to muster a smile and respond politely. She even loved to compare me with other women in the family. I distinctly remember how at a family barbecue she made a point of comparing me to her husband's cousin, who had recently announced her pregnancy. She gushed over the cousin, showering her with praises and gifts, and then turned to me and she said, maybe you should talk to her and find out what she did right. Clearly you're not doing something. What did she exactly mean by that? Well, I like to think that she meant her son doesn't know how to do it properly in my head, which makes it a bit easier and humorous. Nonetheless, I'd be lying if I said that it didn't hurt. Every time she brought something like this up, she could even turn the most generic, normal conversations into snide, hurtful comments about my infertility. Once we were discussing travel plans. My husband mentioned that we were thinking about taking a trip, and my mother-in-law quickly interjected, saying it was a great idea, but whether I would like to focus on starting a family first rather than wasting time away and traveling, as I'm not getting any younger. It was really humiliating, and just another reminder of what she thought. It was another hurtful jab at my struggles, which made me feel like a huge failure at being a woman. Her worst offense came during a family game night. We were playing a game that involved answering personal questions. When it was my turn, she asked me if I could change one thing about my life. What would it be? However, before I could even answer, she herself said that she bet that I wished that I could have children. Now, she wasn't entirely wrong. The moment she asked the question, I had this answer at the back of my head, but I wasn't going to say it out loud in front of everyone. But here she was, taunting and laughing at my misery. The room fell silent, and I felt my face flush with embarrassment and anger. She had even managed to turn a fun night into yet another reminder of my struggles and had me as a laughingstock. Every time something like this would happen, it chipped away at my self-esteem and my patience, and I just tried to remind myself that she was just an overbearing mom, and that her comments were more about her own desires than my failures. But it was hard not to take her words to heart. My husband tried to be supportive through it all, but he didn't always see the full extent of her cruelty. He'd hear the comments, but often brushed them off as his mother just being herself. He loved her and could not see how much words would hurt me. I didn't want to cause a rift between them, so I just endured all the cruelty and kept most of the pain to myself. But there was a limit to how much I could endure, and soon it started to crack my relationship with my husband. Not being able to have a baby had already put a lot of silent stress on my relationship with my husband. There were moments that highlighted just how much this issue was affecting us, even if we didn't always talk about it directly. I remember how once, during a visit to his parents' house for a family get-together, my mother-in-law, as usual, made her snide comments about our lack of children, and I could see it was getting to him. After we left, the car ride home was silent and tense. Normally, we would talk about how the evening went, laugh about funny moments, or, even plan our next week. But that night, we both stared at our windows, lost in our thoughts, and when we got home, I went straight to bed, but he stayed in the living room under the disguise of wanting to watch television. He never came to bed that night. The next morning, we went through our routine as if nothing was wrong. We didn't talk about the previous night, or how his mother's words had affected us, and I believe these moments of silence over the time have affected our relationship more than anything else. The constant pressure and just feeling a failure was straining our bond, and I've somehow been quietly waiting for the day when it would be broken beyond what we could be mended. I believe that you get the general idea of my life and how it's all been through the past few years. Now, the reason I'm here, a week ago, I went to a new fertility specialist recommended by my work colleague, who too had some trouble conceiving and suggested we redo some testing, just to make sure nothing had been missed. Reluctantly, my husband agreed to go through with the process again. However, 2 days ago, the results came back and I saw my heart sink in my chest. It turned out the reason we were not able to conceive was the issue with his sperm count. It was so low that the chances of us conceiving naturally were almost non-existent. Turns out he had been the problem all along. I was devastated, but more than that, I was worried about how my husband would take the news. He'd always been so positive, so hopeful. I didn't want to crush him with this information, and I don't want to hide something so big from him, but I very well understood how it feels when you blame yourself for this misfortune. I didn't want to put my husband through it. Maybe there was still a way that we could have a child. I'm sure there must be treatment for this, right? I think I should search for a solution on my own before I break such devastating news to him. I've decided to keep it to myself, at least for a while, but I'm not sure if that's the best idea. What do you guys think? What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. Man, today's story is super intense because the mother-in-law is so overbearing and completely in everyone's business. What would you do if you found yourself with a mother-in-law like today's story? Drop your comments down below. We're going to check out update number 1, and it's a little bit wild, so make sure you're ready. And if you're not subscribed, go ahead and hit that button. Here is update number 1. I could not be more sad to learn that so many of you related to my story. I wonder why God does this. Aren't women supposed to be easily able to give birth? I can't even begin to thank you for your support and the kind comments I've received over the past 2 weeks. There were people who were somehow able to justify my mother-in-law's actions, but I guess they must be old grannies with ancient beliefs just like my mother-in-law. Anyways, the reason I'm back here so soon is not what most of you must be expecting. No, I did not tell my husband about his little trouble because before I could even tell him anything, his mother did something I could not have imagined even in my wildest of dreams. So, about a week ago, it was a casual family gathering. You know, just a cozy evening with loved ones catching up and enjoying each other's company. Little did I know it was about to turn into a scene straight from a soap opera. My mother-in-law decided that for some reason the setting was appropriate for her to play matchmaker. And guess for who? For my husband, yeah. Now, I'm all for meeting new people, but when she went ahead and started seeing eye up her friend's daughter like a prize catch and nudging her towards my husband, I couldn't help but feel a little bit uneasy. My husband, being the polite guy that he is, he just went about smiling, super awkwardly, and exchanged pleasantries with the girl, all the while stealing glances in my direction, but I could see it in his eyes. The curiosity, the intrigue. My mother-in-law, she was practically beaming with pride, as if she had just made the match of the century. As for me, I was standing there feeling like a third wheel at my own family gathering. It was uncomfortable to say the least, but I tried to brush it off, plastering on a smile and pretending like everything was fine. Little did I know, the moment was just the beginning of a night that I would never forget. Of course, I wasn't just going to stand there and let my mother-in-law introduce a new girl into my husband as a potential new partner when I was standing right there. I mean, hello? Did you forget he had already had a wife? I mustered up the courage to confront her about it. Politely, of course, but instead of acknowledging my discomfort, guess what she did? She reached into her purse, pulled out a stack of paper, and threw them right in my face. I was, of course, shocked for a while, but I reached out for the papers that were on the floor, and they were divorce papers. Can you believe it? Take these and get out of my son's life, you unfortunate Barren, were my mother-in-law's words. The room, it fell silent as everybody turned to stare at me, their eyes full of shock, pity. All eyes were on me, waiting for my reaction, but what could I do? My husband, the man I loved and supported for years, but didn't even come to my defense. Instead, he sided with his mom, as if her cruel words were justified. Humiliated and heartbroken, I couldn't bear to stay a moment longer. I grabbed my coat and stormed out of there, tears streaming down my face. Right now, I'm at my mother's house, and it's been a week since I haven't heard from my husband. This hurts more than anything. I get my mother-in-law's obnoxious, but when my own husband is siding with her, it just breaks my heart. I'm hurt and all alone, and I don't know what to do anymore. Do you? Update number 2. Sometimes the ones you trust the most end up betraying you in the worst way possible. It's been only 2 days since my last post, but I guess they were more than enough for me to learn that my marriage is over. Let me resume where I left off. After that awful night at the family gathering and my storming out, I spent the next few days in a haze. I was angry, hurt, and utterly confused. I kept hoping my husband would reach out, maybe show some remorse, or at least want to talk things through. But as the day dragged on, there was nothing. Not a call, not a text, just silence. When my husband had not reached out even after a week, I grew impatient and concerned. Before any of you say anything, let me tell you I already know that I should not have. But I needed to know where we stood and what was going on in his head. I called him and asked if we could meet up. To my surprise, he apologized to me for not reaching out, but explained that things have been super crazy at his home and at work as well. He further told me that he had been meaning to reach out to me and was going to do it in 2 days later on the weekend. That's when we decided to meet at a cafe. I know it wasn't the ideal situation, yet his explanation felt like a bit of a consolation, and I felt relieved. The day finally came. I was a bundle of nerves. I arrived early, my mind racing with what I would say and how I would even approach the conversation. When he walked in, I couldn't help but notice how tired he looked. We hugged in greeting and sat to talk, and I started to express how much his silence had hurt me and how lost I felt without any communication from him. He listened quietly, nodding occasionally, but his eyes seemed distant. When he finally spoke, he explained how crazy things have been lately, both at home and at work, and he just explained that his mother has been putting a lot of pressure on him, and he'd been struggling to manage everything. He apologized for not reaching out sooner, saying he didn't realize how much his silence was affecting me. While his words were somewhat comforting, there was a certain detachment in his tone that I could not ignore. Then he dropped the bombshell. He started talking about his desire for children and how it was something that he could not ignore any longer. He mentioned how important it was for him to have a family, and how his mother's constant reminders had made him realize that he might need to look for a partner who could give him that. I was stunned. It felt like a punch to the gut. I mean, here he was, calmly suggesting that maybe it's time for him to find someone else. Somebody who could have given him the children he wanted. There was no anger in his voice, no guilt, just a matter-of-fact tone, as if it were discussing a business decision. I was too shocked and furious to answer. Instead of apologizing, as I had hoped, he had actually come here to end the marriage. I know, I was in no state to respond, so furious I just got up and stormed out of the cafe. I feel so stupid right now. What was I thinking when I married him? How come I never noticed how shallow he was? I guess it was a good thing I didn't tell him the truth behind our inability to conceive, otherwise I would have never learned his true colors. Even though I'm angry, there's a lot of pain. I mean, how could he do this to me? If anything, I'm sure that I will not let him and his mother get away with this so easily. I'm going to make him pay in the worst way possible. I already have something in my mind. How I'm going to execute is the question. I'll keep you guys posted. Until then, you guys have had great ideas to make my husband and mother-in-law lives hell. Feel free to share some more. See ya. Update number 3. Hey guys, I can say from experience now that revenge feels amazing. It's been a month since my last update, and I can proudly say that I've made that jerk pay for what he did. I can't wait to tell you guys, so let me get straight into it. About a week after the humiliating meeting at the cafe, I woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. I won't lie, it still hurt, but I felt something more. My sadness had turned into anger and my grief into a desire for revenge. All I wanted to do was make my husband pay for abandoning me all of a sudden. The first thing I did was call the hospital back and inform them that I had lost the report and would appreciate if they could email it to me. Since the original report was still at my in-laws, I had to ask the hospital. Next, I drafted an eviction notice for my mother-in-law. My parents had given us the house as a wedding gift, and while it was a gift to both of us, the lease was in my name, making me the rightful and sole owner of the property. I was done with her toxic influence, and it was time she faced the consequences of her actions. The notice gave her 3 days to pack her crap and leave. But I wasn't really done yet. It wasn't the easiest part, but with a sense of clarity and a bit of determination, I signed those divorce papers my mother-in-law threw at my face. Then I gathered everything, the signed papers, the eviction notice, the infertility report, and mailed those documents to my husband and my mother-in-law, ensuring that they reached them promptly. To add a final decisive touch, I sent copies to all our relatives. If they wanted to meddle in our lives, they might as well have the full story. As expected, the fallout was swift and dramatic. The family was shocked by the revelation of my husband's infertility, and for years, my mother-in-law had painted me as the problem. The reason her son could not have children. Now, the truth was out, and she was exposed and humiliated, and the tables had turned. And for once, the spotlight of blame was on her or her precious son. I received a ton of calls and angry messages from my husband. He was furious with me for airing our private matters so publicly. He felt betrayed, humiliated, but I guess the reality of the situation soon sank in because soon the messages turned into messages of regret and apologies. Feeling guilty and desperate, my husband and mother-in-law decides to confront me. They came to the house hoping to persuade me to reconsider the divorce. The funniest part was how my mother-in-law did not even look like my mother-in-law. For once, she wasn't her overbearing self, but looked pretty humble. It was something that I've been waiting for, but I was resolute. They had crossed too many of these lines, caused too much pain, and there's no going back now. I listened to their pleas, their apologies, but my mind was made up. All I did was, with all respect, tell my mother-in-law that I had no intentions of staying with her impotent son. The look on her face was priceless, and it was a mix of disbelief. For years, she had lorded over me, making me feel inadequate, and now the truth was staring at her in the face. She was powerless, and she knew it. As for my husband, I could see the regret inside of his eyes. He wanted to turn back to me to undo the damage, but it's too late. His actions, his betrayal, had severed the bond between us. There's no trust, no foundation to build on. The love I once had for him was buried under the layers of hurt and betrayal. And finally, I just slammed the door in their faces. It was a final act of closure. I wish I could say that I feel great after making a laughingstock of my husband, but though it helped me, I don't know, make him realize what he did to me, it did not make my pain go away. But hopefully the pain will subside and I'll be able to move on soon. So this is my story. Thank you for each of you and your kindness and support. Guys, let's check out this one comment. It says, OP. Talk about things going too far. Airing your dirty laundry for the whole family to see, that's petty and vindictive. Sure, your mother-in-law and husband were awful, but broadcasting his infertility, that's a low blow, man. Some things should stay private, and you crossed the line by exposing such personal information to everybody. It seems like you were more interested in revenge than finding a mature solution, right? You could have just divorced him and moved on, but instead you made a spectacle out of it. It's hard to sympathize with somebody who stoops to that level of spite. Hopefully, you learn that revenge does not heal hurt. It just creates more drama. Guys, let me know if you agree with that commenter or if you just completely disagree. Drop down your advice below. Thank you for joining me. My name's Mr. Reddito, and if you want more daily videos, all you gotta do is subscribe. I'll see you guys tomorrow, and of course, remember, it's cool to be kind. Peace.